All right, hello everyone, it's Mrs. Lewis here. You were given an assignment previously and asked to complete section 4.2 practice A. We did this in class. We never went over it, and you may not have been able to get very far with it, so we're going to look at this some more now. I'm going to do a few problems from this and then ask you to do the remaining ones for your classwork. And before we do this, just a reminder, section 4.2 is on percent change. So this is the percent increase, percent decrease. This is the concept that we did with the capsules and the sponges. These are the formulas. They're in your notes that you're using for this section. Percent increase is the new amount minus the original amount all over the original amount. Percent decrease was the original amount minus the new amount all over the original amount. Okay, so it's always going to be the larger one minus the smaller one divided by the original. So let's do some of these problems. Let's look at number 4. In number 4, they say identify the percent of change as an increase or a decrease, then find the percent change. Round to the nearest tenth of a percent if necessary. In number 4, we're doing 28 seconds to 23 seconds. So 28 seconds to 23 seconds. My first question is this increase or decrease? Well, it went from 28 to 23, it went down, so that's decrease. To find the percent decrease, we want to subtract the larger minus the smaller, so 28 minus 23, and then we divide that by the number that we started with. The original was the first number was 28. So that gives me 5 over 28. I want to express this as a decimal first so I can get my percent. So I'm going to do 5 divided by 28. And I get a decimal of 0.17857. I'm not going to carry it out all the way. That's enough. I need to express this as a percent. So to get my percent, I'm going to move my decimal 2 spaces to the right. And it becomes 17 point, and then what? It's not 0.8 because we have to round. So this is what we have so far, 17.857%. But they ask us to round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So looking at the number that we have now, going to the tenths place, and a lot of people have difficulty with rounding. So if rounding confuses you, you need to pay close attention here. Go to the number immediately to the right of your decimal point, so that since we're rounding this to the nearest tenth, we're going to start at the tenths place, at the 8. We look to the right, okay? We look at this number. If this number is 5 or bigger, then that means we move 8 up to the next number. Since 5 is 5 or higher, we're going to round the 8 up to a 9. So we're going to say it's 17.9%. So that's how we round to the nearest tenth. And this was a decrease. 17.9% decrease is our answer. Let's look at number 6. This time this is a different question. We're not asked to calculate percent increase or decrease. We are asked to find the new amount if 140 fluid ounces is increased by 45%. So in this question, I'm not really going to go to the formula. I'm just going to think about what the words are asking me to do. 140 increased, so I'm going to add, and I'm going to add 45% of 140. So let's write this out in words that make sense. 140 increased by 45% of 140. So I need to think about it as the percent of the original amount so I know how to write out my algebraic expression. So 140 increased means add. 45%, I've got to convert that to a decimal, so it's going to become 0.45. Of is telling me to multiply it to the original 140. Okay? So I can put this into my calculator. All right, if I do 0.45 times 140, that will give me 63. So 140 plus 63. If I add those together, that's going to give me 203. Okay, so and the units, don't forget your units. This was fluid ounces. So 203 fluid ounces is our answer. So that's number 6. Let's look at number 9. It's still the same directions, find the new amount, but you have a word problem. Yesterday, your bus ride to school took 10 minutes. Today, your bus ride took 12 minutes. What is the percent change? So, is this an increase or a decrease? Yesterday was 10 minutes, today was 12 minutes, so that's a percent increase. Okay, so with percent increase, we need to say 12. We need to say the new amount minus the original amount divided by the original amount. So the first day was the 10 minutes. So 12 minus 10 over 10. So that gives me 2 over 10. So that's 2/10 or 0.2. And then convert this to a percent. You move it 2 spaces. You can put in the 0 and it becomes 20%. And that is an increase. So 20% increase is my answer. Number 10. Identify the percent of change as an increase or decrease, then find the percent of change. Round to the nearest tenth of a percent if necessary. This is the same exact question, same exact directions that we were given in the first part. They just threw in some fractions, but that's okay. So on number 10, is this an increase or a decrease? If I went from 1/3 to 2/3, okay, so let's draw a picture. I'm divided into thirds. I started out with 1/3 shaded, and then I went up to 2/3, so that was an increase. It went up. So I need to set this up for number 10. It's an increase. And I want to do, because it's an increase, I do the larger one minus the smaller one, so 2/3 minus 1/3. All divided by the original. We started out with a 1/3. That was the first number. Okay, now the calculator will help you with the fractions. So to type this in, 2/3, you're going to go, now depending on which calculator you have, I can't remember the colors. Some calculators will have a fraction bar that you'll use. Some calculators will be like mine with the ABC button. So I'm going to go 2 ABC3 minus 1 ABC3. If you have the other type, you're just going to go 2 fraction bar 3 minus 1 fraction bar 3. That gives me 1/3. So I've got 1/3 divided by 1/3. Okay? Well, I'm dividing fractions. So that's 1/3 times the reciprocal of the second. So you flip the bottom one, 3 over 1. And then when you multiply these together, you reduce the 3's. They cancel, so you're just left with 1. So what is 1 if I express that as a percent? Well, so if I write this as a percent, I've got 1. The decimal currently sits after it. I need to move it 2 spaces, put my zeros in. So it's 100% increase. Okay, 100% increase for that one. Don't let the fractions scare you. It's not good. You still do the same steps. And number 13. Still the same directions. This month, a band has 6 musicians. This is a 50% increase from the number of musicians in the band last month. How many musicians were in the band last month? Okay, so how are we going to do this one? We know what the band has currently, and the current number is a 50% increase from the previous number, and we have to find the previous number. So one way that we can think about this, notice they said percent increase. That's a 50% increase. All right, well, we know we have a formula for percent increase from our notes. It's the new minus the original divided by the original. So let's use that. So we have percent increase. I'm going to write my formula down. Equals the new minus the original divided by the original. Okay? Okay, or you can just think of it as the big number minus the smaller number divided by the original number. Okay, in this problem, they said that we have a 50% increase. So I'm going to, for percent increase, I'm going to put 50%. Equals. All right, and then we've got new, we've got original. What were we given? This month, there are 6 musicians. How many were there last month? So 6 is going to be the new amount. So new is going to be 6. And we have to figure out what the original is. So I'm going to use it, I'm going to let X be my original amount. Let's call it X, so we'll solve for X. So we have to solve this for X now. Remember the 50%, if it's in a formula or in an equation, we're going to write it as a decimal. So I need to convert it. So it's going to go back 2 spaces. It's going to be 0.5. You can put a 0 here if you want to. Equals 6 minus X over X. And then you can think of that as being over 1. You've got a proportion you can cross multiply. So 0.5x equals 1 times 6 minus x, which is 6 minus x. And we have to use our inverse operations to solve for x. So we need to, let's add x to both sides. Oh, and let me remind you, you should be using a pencil to do these problems. Why is Mrs. Lewis using a pen? Only so it'll show up on your computer screen. That's the only reason I'm using an ink pen. You should be using a pencil. I'm going to add 1x to both sides. So 0.5x plus 1x is 1.5x equals 6. And these cancel over here. And then to do the inverse operation, undo that multiplication. So you're going to divide both sides by 1.5. That gives us x equal 6 divided by 1.5 is going to give me an answer of 4. Okay, so that means there were 4 musicians last month. We'll say 4 musicians for our answer. Now, should all of this that you should have copied all of this down. Don't let me see it all trying to squish in here. You do not have space on this page. It's just like a textbook page. You should be writing it on a separate sheet of paper for your notes. Okay, but that's how you can do number 13. Your job is to finish this sheet. So you're going, any problems that you didn't do last week, you're going to finish those. And at the end, you're going to be turning this assignment in at the end of the class. And if you have questions, even though I'm not there, Mrs. Barmer or Mr. Lewis will be more than happy to help you with any questions that you have.